Okay, so welcome to this video on first aid kits. I'm going to show you my two first aid kits that we bring along on trips. One is a smaller one that's used for the group leaders, chaperones that are leading a group, and the other one is my first aid kit, which I carry with me, and it obviously has a little bit more stuff as the trip leader. I have a little more responsibility. So I'm going to go through mine first, and then I'll go through a smaller one so you have an idea of what's in them. It's really important that you know what is in a first aid kit, because if you have an incident out in the woods, you need to know what is available to you as far as resources that you have available. This is a 20 liter, that was a 10 liter dry bag, and so these keep them dry. And I carry this on the outside of any of my packs. I try not to put it in a pack because then it's just not very accessible, and we want it to be accessible. If something happens to me, the students need to know where to get it from, and the same thing for the chaperone. So I'll start with this one. The very first thing I'm going to mention is that when I'm going on trip, usually I carry a satellite phone, and that satellite phone very likely is in the very top of this bag, and sometimes I even take the time to show a student or one of the chaperones that's in my group how to use it in the event that something happens to me, that we can still utilize this resource and take advantage of it. So I rent the sat phone, so I don't have a copy of it with me right now, but it's a little bit bigger than your typical cell phone, kind of like an old cell phone from years ago, and it runs off satellites. And so when we're outside of cell phone service, you can still use it. Okay, so now I'm going to go through the stuff that you'll find in it, and I definitely pack this. I pack it like with stuff that I'm less likely to need at the bottom and things that I'm more likely to need towards the top. So one of the first things you should find near the top of the first aid kit is a roll of toilet paper. And you might say, well, what the heck? I thought we were all bringing our own toilet paper. Well, you are. But if you need to stop in the middle of a trip, your toilet paper might be at the bottom of a pack, very difficult to access. This is very easy to access because the first aid kit is designed to be so. So usually just a small amount, maybe not a little more than what I've got here, but not much, is brought along on the trip. So toilet paper. The next thing I have is a fairly large solid case. It's also waterproof, of Band-Aids, and a lot of different Band-Aids go into this thing. I usually restock it every year, double check that I've got things. This is one thing that almost gets used every year a little bit. You know, a good year we don't open it, but it's not uncommon to see it get opened. So waterproof Band-Aids, a must, right? A real must to have them along on the trip. Okay, so there's my Band-Aid supply. Now, to go with my Band-Aid, there's a couple other things that are usually near the top here. One is a pair of, couple sets of gloves, medical gloves that you can put on to protect your hands if you're dealing with somebody who has a bad cut. You may not want to have their blood all over you, and this is kind of important. There are more of these in other places, but I like to have some right near the top of the kit. And sometimes I even put them in the package with the Band-Aids, as well as these, which are antiseptic wipes. So this gives you a chance to clean a wound and help make sure that anybody who is cut badly, they have a wound to address with a little cleansing, because we don't want infection, and this will help prevent any infection out in the wilderness. The next thing, which is fairly commonly used and often ends up towards the top of a kit, is our meds, and we have ibuprofen, we have Tylenol, we have Benadryl, and these are things that we bring along. You're kind of over-the-counter household meds. There's some Imodium in here. There's some Tums in here, throat lozenges in here. Just things, comfort meds that we might need along the trip. And I talked about those in the wilderness first aid notes. So we talked about what they're for and how they might get used. I find the Benadryl in particular get used a fair bit. Okay? And we do bring a number of tablets of those. The next up is another baggie full of creams and various gels, I suppose you would say. So I have probably most used is Polysporin or antibacterial cream, hydrocortisone cream for your itches and your allergic reactions on your skin. And then there's another cream in here that is for burns, if you have a burn on your skin. And then I also have some Afterbite in here, which also comes in a tube. The green bottle is your Aloe. I bring a small amount of this in case somebody gets a bad sunburn, and we can offer some relief for the sunburn. And there's even a little bit of Aquasil here. You'll find that I do bring along some repair supplies, and this is a tube of material that can be used to seal a leak in a tent or a tarp, and it can be very useful, and it's commonly brought along by wilderness campers. Another item that you might see in here is a little yellow device right there. That's called a tick remover, and we bring that to remove any ticks if we come across them. Never had this problem yet, but ticks seem to be getting to be more and more of an issue, and so it's a good idea just to bring along a tick remover in my kit. And this allows you to kind of wedge and pull a tick out properly without leaving its head into the person, which is important. Next up is a pack of what I call sort of my Tensor Pack or my ankle pack. And again, there are a bunch of gauzes in here if you had a bad bleed. So again, some more gloves just in case we need it, triangle bandages, tensor bandages, tape, absorbative pads, that kind of thing are in this bag. It's a little bit bigger, a little bit bulkier. It's not real heavy, but it can be very useful if we have somebody with a sprain or a pretty significant ankle injury. And then I have a small bag here that has some more sort of safety issues. I have some spare bug spray with DEET in it. I have a couple of pens. I have a couple of lighters in case we run out of juice with our lighter, if it breaks on us. It's always good to have a spare. And usually in this bag, I often have my wilderness first aid notes. They're actually in another spot in this particular kit, but sometimes I have my notes in here that I can have access to, read. I can record things. So if a student becomes or an individual on a trip becomes really ill, we want to start monitoring them, like monitoring their breathing and their pulse and fatigue. We can write those things down, jot it down, write the times down so that we know what time things are happening and what's going on with them, because that's important to do and to make a judgment whether a rescue is needed or not, or whether that person can get out. And then we get more into some sort of repair and safety issues. So duct tape is a great repair solution. This is a pretty heavy roll of Gorilla tape. I like to, if I'm going to bring it, I'm going to bring the good stuff so that if it works to repair something, it's great. And it can be very useful material. We have used it many times. Kids will go to it knowing that it's there. Then I often bring a spare Platypus 4-liter gravity-fed filter. It's the complete set, the same as what you'll have in your pails. In case something happens and breaks one of ours, we have all the parts here that we could supply in and out, or we could just switch the two, okay? With that, I have, and on top of that, an additional gravity-fed filter that can be popped in and out. So this is the filter part. So the water, dirty water goes through one end and then clean water comes out on the other end. And so we can use that if we need it with the filter. If it plugs, we've had it where in the past students have plugged them up because we just put too dirty of water into the filter bag. So it's possible that can happen. All right, some more safety issues that we bring along. This is a bear spray, bear repellent. We bring this just in case we have a nuisance bear. Never had a problem with a bear on any of my trips ever in my life. Seen lots of bears when I've been in the wilderness. Dozens of times I've seen bears. I've almost run into them on my mountain bike, but every time I scare them, they take off. So I've never really had a problem. Don't think I'd ever use this, and I don't generally bring it when I go on my own by myself in a smaller trip. But with a big group, it's just a thing that's worth bringing along. They're not cheap, and I've never had to use them, but it's there just in case we do, okay? Safety's still on it just in case. Another thing I like to bring along is just a little spare piece of rope. So I always throw one of these in the bottom of my first aid kit. So as you can tell, I'm getting down to the bottom of this baby. And then last but not least, I have what's known as a medical kit that you can buy, and I just bought one of these. They're not cheap. This was like 60 or 70 bucks, and I don't really use it a lot. It's gone many times around Algonquin Park, and very few things have been taken out of it. Once in a while, I do bring an item or two out of it, and then I usually replace it when we get home. So I'm just going to open this up. It zips around. I'm not sure you can see that, but it's got a zipper that goes all the way around 3 sides, and then it allows me to unfold it completely like this. And you'll see that most of the items that are in here are also already in my first aid kit, but there are a few things that are not. I'm just going over it from my left to right. Here is like, more gloves, more Band-Aids, more antiseptic wipes, and a pair of tweezers, something we hadn't seen before, okay? And it's more for bleeding stuff over here on this side. Then in this middle, we have fractures and sprains. And so we have a tensor bandage, we have triangle bandages, and we have something called a SAM splint, which is a splint that is made out of aluminum and can be molded around an individual. In the middle here, we have our first aid notes. We could bring along some iodine. I used to do that. I've kind of gotten away from bringing iodine because of the fact that the antiseptic wipes work so well, although I might regret that if I ever have a bigger problem. You have to dilute the iodine at about 5 mils to 100 mils, so it's a little more complicated thing when you're in the woods. But I also have an extra spare triangle bandage. They come in useful for a lot of things, and a good pair of scissors. So I like to have something really good as far as a pair of scissors in the bush. We also have a decent pair of scissors in our kitchen kit that we can use. And then also here it's got some more tape, some safety pins, and then more antiseptic wipes and specialized Band-Aids for like burns and various other things are all in here. So wounds and burn care over on blisters over on this side. Sometimes you'll even find a little bit of, what do they call that? Second skin in here. I've been kind of going just with duct tape these days. I find duct tape works just as well. So that's my little first aid kit that I purchased to bring along on my trips. And I only have one of these, and I bring along on each of the trips. It's been around Algonquin a few times. So that is the backpacker's kit and my stuff all over here. Now I'm going to take out. Here is a much smaller kit. Now each chaperone will get one of these, and you'll notice that it's not particularly full. There's room for other things, and so lots of times a chaperone will put a few of their personal items, maybe their phone, a few other things that they want into here. They're welcome to do that, and I encourage them to do so. Just be respectful of the fact that what you're looking for might not be right at the very top of the kit. You might want to take that stuff out and set it aside, make sure it doesn't get lost, especially if they're not around when you're doing this, okay? Once again, a little bit of TP. This one's getting a little thin. Might have to get a little more in that one before going on the next trip. Then a little Band-Aid kit. So you got a bunch of Band-Aids, antiseptic wipes, a pair of gloves in here, so that if you have a cut or something bleeding, you can deal with that fairly quickly. At least there's some items here. I have a better selection, but at least you have something to get started with here. Okay. Then we have our meds and creams kit. So there's 3 different creams in here. There's antiseptic cream, hydrocortisone cream, and what's the other one? Afterbite, is it? Yeah, it's Afterbite. And then there is one bottle of meds that'll have probably ibuprofen, Tylenol, ibuprofen brown, Tylenol white, and Benadryl in pink, and just that. And if people need anything else more, I'm the bigger drugstore. And then, of course, I often have added this in, and I probably should add it to mine as well. I didn't seem to see it in there. Is a little bit of Polysporin eye drop. You'd be surprised how many times kids take a stick to the eye on a portage or whatever, and just being able to have a little bit of eye drops in there. I never used to take it, and I had a couple incidents, and I said, you know what, that's a simple, lightweight item. I'm going to add it in, and so I added it to my first aid list. Then I have a tensor with a bit of tape, so if somebody does sprain an ankle, you have some option to get started on doing some repairs. I have a much bigger, broader kit, so we can go with that. I then have some duct tape, great for blisters, also good for repairs around camp. It's pretty small, not as good. It's just a cheaper version of the duct tape. Then I have a filter, water filter, just like the other one. Each group will have their own spare water filter in case they have a plug. They don't have to come running looking for me. They can go to this and see how things are going. Then also something with a spare lighter and a pen in it as well in case they want to write some notes down. Sometimes we even put a pad of paper in here. In fact, I know I do because I have some instructions that usually I put in here that help list all the things that are in the first aid kit so that, you know, if you're looking for something, you can look on that and see what's in here, and also what's in my first aid kit is on the other side, so that, oh, we don't have that, but look, Lou's got that in his first aid kit. Let's get him and go get it. So you have that information. You can also use the back sides of those papers to write notes down or write anything down if you need to, because you don't want to forget it, right? Then, of course, another little piece of rope for that group, and then another small store-bought Rexall first aid kit, and this one is much like the blue one, just of course a lot smaller. It does have a little pair of scissors in here and a little tweezers, a tiny bit of tape, you know, some more Band-Aids, some antiseptic wipes, all kinds of different things are in here. There's even a list of all the items that are listed in here, and you can go through it, you know, towelettes and triangle bandages and stuff like that. So it's pretty good little kit too. So you need something, you can go through it and pick those items out that you need. So both these kits come along on a trip if there's more than one group. If there's one group, I'm just going to bring the big one. If there's 4 groups, there'll be 3 of these and 1 of those. My group will have this, and the other 3 groups will have that smaller kit. And I actually have enough supplies to do that. And that looks after roughly 9 or 10 people, maybe a maximum of 12 on trip, and we'll find them very useful. Hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you next time in Mr. Lou's Outdoor Ed class.